Today, we are diving into a really revolutionary way of thinking about law. I want you to forget about dusty old books and stuffy, abstract rules for a minute. Instead, we're going to explore how law can be seen as an active, powerful tool, something that's actually used to build and shape the very society we live in.
So let's just start with a really basic question. What is law to you? Is it just a collection of commands, regulations just sitting on a shelf somewhere? Or could it be something more, something alive, something that's in constant motion? This is the central question that the Sociological School of Jurisprudence really forces us to ask.
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look beyond the old-school traditional view of law. Then, we'll see how law actually operates out there, in the real world. We'll also dive into the pretty radical idea of social engineering. Then we'll try to understand how society's needs get balanced, and finally, we'll see why all of this still matters so much today.
All right, let's get into our first point, moving beyond the books. See, to really get why this new way of thinking was such a big deal, we first have to understand what the legal world looked like before it came along.
For a really long time, legal thinkers were basically in two main camps. On one side, you had folks who saw law as something abstract, kind of disconnected. They believed it was either this perfectly logical system of rules, that's what we call positivism, or a set of universal moral principles, which is natural law. Both of these views basically put law up in a kind of ivory tower, separate from real life. But then the sociological school comes along and says, hey, wait a minute. To understand law, you have to get out on the streets. They argued that law is a social phenomenon, a tool that society uses to control itself, and that you can only understand it by seeing how it actually works in our messy, everyday lives. So how did this massive shift from abstract theory to social reality actually happen? Well, it was driven by a group of pioneering thinkers who insisted that we need to focus on what the law does in the real world, not just what it says in a book.
And this slide right here really gets to the heart of their big idea. On the left, you've got the law in books, the formal statutes and codes sitting in a law library. But on the right, you have the law in action, the bustling, chaotic marketplace of everyday life. This is all about the real-world effects of those laws, how people actually behave, and the unwritten rules that truly govern our interactions. The sociological school argued that this law in action is where the real meaning of law is found.
One of the key early figures here was a guy named Rudolph von Ihering. He argued that law isn't some mystical force. It's created for a very practical reason. He said its whole purpose is to serve society by balancing the competing interests of individuals and groups. For him, law was basically the result of a constant struggle to find that balance.
Now, building on this, Eugen Ehrlich introduced this incredible concept of the living law. He pointed out that the formal laws made by the government are just one tiny part of the picture. The true living law is found in the unwritten rules of our families, of business, and of our communities. I mean, think about it. These are the norms we follow every single day, and honestly, they're often way more powerful than any official statute.
Okay, so these ideas really paved the way for the single most influential concept in this entire school of thought. An American jurist named Roscoe Pound took all these threads and wove them into this incredibly powerful metaphor that would change legal thinking forever. The idea of law as social engineering.
So what in the world is social engineering? Well, Pound saw law as a conscious, systematic effort. He imagined lawmakers and judges as engineers. But instead of building bridges or buildings, they were building a better society. They were using law as their primary tool to structure relationships, maximize people's satisfaction, and minimize all that friction and conflict. It's a really proactive, problem-solving approach to law. And what's the number one rule here? The single most important guiding principle of this entire approach? It's all about pragmatism. Just forget abstract logic or doing things because we've always done it that way. The only question that really matters is, does the law work? Does it produce good results for society? The real-world effect of a law is the ultimate test of its value, period.
Now, this all sounds great in theory, right? But how does it actually work in practice? I mean, how does a legal engineer actually make decisions? Well, Pound provided a really detailed framework for doing just that.
He started by mapping out all the competing interests that are always swirling around in society, and he broke them down into three main categories. First, you have individual interests. These are the things we claim for ourselves, like our right to privacy or our property. Then there are public interests, which are the claims of the state itself, like maintaining national security. And finally, he identified social interests. These are the broad claims of society as a whole, things like public health, free speech, or protecting the environment.
So how does a legal engineer actually use this? Well, imagine you're a judge facing a really tough case. Following Pound's model, you would first identify all of the conflicting demands at play. Second, you'd classify them as individual, public, or social. Third, and this is the really crucial step, you would weigh these interests against each other. And finally, you'd decide the case in a way that secures the most interests with the least amount of friction and waste. It's a methodical process for trying to resolve society's toughest clashes.
But here's the thing. Pound didn't think all interests were created equal. For him, the ultimate goal, the most important social interest of them all, was making sure that every single person has the opportunity to live a decent, fulfilling life. That, right there, is the end game of all this legal engineering.
So, let's bring all this together. Why does a legal theory from over a century ago still matter so much? Well, because its impact is absolutely everywhere in our modern world. This is way more than just a theory.
The legacy of this way of thinking is just immense. Today, it's pretty much common sense to view law as a tool to achieve specific goals. I mean, just think about modern environmental regulations. They are a perfect example of social engineering in action. They're balancing the individual interests of businesses against the massive social interests we all have in public health and a clean planet. This approach forces law to look outside itself, demanding that legal decisions be informed by data from fields like sociology and economics. Honestly, this way of thinking is now a cornerstone of how many lawyers, judges, and lawmakers approach their work every day.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. If law really is this powerful tool for engineering society, it leaves us with a pretty provocative and profoundly important question. Who do we trust to be the engineer? Should it be judges, politicians, technical experts, or maybe the people themselves? The answer to that question continues to shape our world.